Welcome to 365 Christian Men, where every day we aim to inspire and encourage with real-life stories about men. August 19th, Xian. Xian has been arrested so many times he's lost count, but he's not a bad guy. Li's arrests and the brutal treatments he has endured are all because he is preaching the gospel. Li says he keeps a go bag ready, not for jet setting, but because he's ready for the next arrest. It contains a blanket and a change of clothes.
Do not settle for safe. Be courageous and do what you know you are being called to do. God called Pastor Li to a life of great danger in a nation that did not know Christ. He was in a country which had a legal system at war with Christianity. Still, Pastor Li treasured God more than he feared anything man could do to him, and he was compelled to preach the gospel of Jesus in China. More times than he could count, brutal public security officers burst in while Pastor Li was preaching, and they dragged him out of the house. But he remained relentless and said, "I will preach until I die." One quiet Tuesday morning in an unregistered house church, about 400 Christians crowded into the room to celebrate the God who had given them a freedom that they never thought possible. Secretly shuffling in, they found seats on wrinkled newspapers on the floor because the authorities had already confiscated their chairs. The people knew what the authorities would do to them if they were caught, but they loved their Savior, and they loved each other, and they loved gathering in His name. Pastor Li opened his mouth to preach. Again, angry government employees stormed into the crowded home, shouting accusations, and shoved their way through people. Officers seized Pastor Li and dragged him into the street. They bludgeoned him, and his fellow Christ followers, including his wife, could only watch. United in their barbarity, they made an example of Pastor Li, smashed his face against the stone, and repeatedly kicked him in the stomach and groin. As they hauled him off to prison, Li's wife, Chow, tried to hand him a small black bag. "What is that?" the officials demanded. "It's a blanket and some clothes," Pastor Li told them. He thanked his wife and he told her, "I've been expecting you." At the police station, they shackled Pastor Li's ankles and his shins and inserted a metal rod to hold his feet apart wider than his shoulders. Between his legs, they put a ring and shackled his wrists to it, so he had to stand, his spine bowed. They left him like that for 3 days. They interrogated Pastor Li, but he would not succumb to fear. "I do not fear you," he said. They shouted back, "You fear us." He endured several more hours of abuse. Then he was placed in isolation because the officers did not want him to preach the gospel to any of the other prisoners. Pastor Li eventually returned home after being given a strong warning not to preach any longer. This was a warning he had received many times before, but he remained resolute in his call, and he would not stop. Christ was the first to suffer. We just follow him. There are many thorns, but we are just injured a little on our feet. This suffering is very little, Pastor Li said. Chow stood with her husband and said confidently, "God will take care of him. There is no need to worry." The following Tuesday morning, Pastor Li boldly returned to proclaim the gospel of Jesus to the many who again crowded into that same small home church. In Psalm 118, verse 7, we are told, "The Lord is on my side as my helper. I shall look in triumph on those who hate me." Is fear keeping you from serving God? Is the Lord calling you to step out in faith and do something that may feel very uncomfortable? Do not settle for safe. Be courageous and do what you know you are called by God to do.
Thank you for listening to today's story. Every day of the year, our hope is to inspire you with real-life stories of faithful men who have gone before us. Hebrews 12:1 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. Let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." Join us tomorrow for another story at 365christianmen.com.